So now we have our 32-bit image, and what I want to do now is I want to take this and I want to map those tones that I can't see into those tones that I can see. To do that, I'm going to switch my mode from 32-bit to 16-bit. From here, once I do that, you'll see that the image changes, and it's very, very different. Now, you have a couple of options, right? You can go ahead and just equalize your histogram. You can go ahead and do exposure and gamma. You can go ahead and do highlight compression. But for the most part, the one that a lot of people use for this is local adaptation. So this is how you would work with creating the HDR file that you're working with. Now, basically, what we're doing here is, or what I do with this image is, I'm going to increase the strength of my HDR file. So how strong do I want that effect to be? Right? They call it here edge glow. Now, the radius is how wide is that effect going to be cast. So notice that if I grab my radius and I make it really, really wide, it almost looks like you have this loss of detail. You bring the radius back over this way, you start getting a lot of finer detail. Bring it this way. Take a look at the section that we have over here and what's happening on this side. Now, if you increase the strength, you start recovering some of that detail that you lost by having a much smaller radius, right? So normally what I'm doing here is I'm just going to go ahead and just kind of ride my radius probably 3/4 of the way, and then I really do kind of play with my strength quite a bit, right? So this is one setting that I'll tend to do. It's kind of where I work. Now, one of the things that they've changed inside of Photoshop CS6 is this section here called edge smoothness, right? So what this does is it preserves the smoothing, but it kind of gives you a little bit more edge detail. So watch what's happening here, right? Here it looks like I could use a little bit more texture. I could use a little bit more, kind of grain in that image. I want detail. By putting in the edge smoothness, I get a little bit more here, I get a little bit more here, but overall the file hasn't been compromised too much. I think that that's a very small change, but a very, very effective change that they've made inside of this HDR file. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. When you're working with HDR images, a lot of this stuff has to do with working with it to taste. So there is no tried and true method of saying, all right, well, I use a radius of this, I do this, I work with this. This is something that you kind of just play with on your own, and radius and strength are just kind of sliders that you're just going to get used to. You're just going to turn around and start playing around until you find something that you like. Now, also keep in mind that when you do that, this has nothing to do with a global setting, right? So this file will benefit from something that looks like this. Another file will benefit from something completely different. And that's kind of the beauty and the art of HDR. It's not like you can stamp a specific effect on it and go, this is it, we're done, and you can move over. So you can actually have a lot of nuance when you're working with this. And don't get stuck in one spot. Play with all of it. I usually tell people, play at the extremes, right? Bring your radius all the way down, bring this all the way up. Start from there, and then little by little, just kind of creep it in and see what that does. You can get yourself some really, really interesting effects by just doing that. Once you got it, the effect at least, like the general feel for the image, you want to go ahead and you want to start adjusting the overall tones, lights and darks. And I think that a lot of the times when you're working with HDR, that really is probably the more important of that. We're going to talk about that in the next lesson.